Hey everyone. So last week I posted a video on the group about another EMDR session. So I'll be sharing the video, stopping at certain parts and discussing what could have been done differently using IEMT and why. So let's go. I'm gonna share my sound and screen.
Really, throughout this process, you can give me as much or as little detail as you feel you want to. That's one of the things that defines EMDR, is you don't have to get into this big, long narrative about things. Okay. But, you know, it's nice to check in. It's nice for me to have a little bit of a sense of where we're going with this work. Mm-hmm. So to review from yesterday, can you tell me a bit about the incident that it is you want to target?
Okay. When I was about 6 years old, I was out wading in the ocean with my father.
Okay.
And a wave knocked me down.
Okay.
And I went underwater and I froze.
Okay.
The only thing I could think of to do was to raise my right hand and call for him. Not really effective when you're completely submerged. Okay. So the result, of course, as you'd understand, I just had this inrush of water into me, my lungs, my mouth, everything. He did get the idea that I needed help and pull me up.
So the first pose over here, did everybody notice the pronoun jump? When she was talking about what happened with her, and then she said, you experience 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a very obvious dissociative jump where she's expressing that you could understand, which is also somehow referential to wanting others to understand. Might be, might not be, but this is something to pay attention to. They've chosen a very specific event just to figure out what is something they can work on effectively for this demo. I'm not sure if this is part of an official training or this is just done for the purpose of recording. But differently than other stuff you might find on YouTube, this is a person with an actual specific problem volunteering to become a recorded client to be worked on, compared with other people maybe acting that they have a certain problem. So let's go back and see what else there is over there.
And though the whole event's still pretty clear in my mind, and it's been a barrier for me for doing things like enjoying being in the ocean. I made some huge steps recently. I will say that. Or I grew up not able to go in a swimming pool unless I had my feet on the bottom. I'm not able to swim. I get very anxious if I start getting that place where the water's rising. And I just feel I've missed out a lot of things I'd like to do and do not have to wear, well, you know, a flotation belt to be in a pool. Sure. You know, I'd like to learn to swim so I can get some exercise. There's just some things I'd like to do.
Okay, great. So, I mean, that gives me a pretty good goal, idea of what your goals are, what you want to get out of doing this work, which is an important part of this, and I have enough of the memory that we can work with. And just to affirm, like we talked about yesterday, this is pretty single incident. You're not identifying any developmental trauma, any complex trauma issues. No. So, and that's one of the reasons I feel comfortable doing this demo style.
Okay, so here, but this is definitely an experienced psychotherapist, and she has her background related to trauma and diagnostics, etc. But what I find interesting is that she's asking the client to, so there is no signs of any developmental trauma, as if she can identify if there's an actual development trauma that's happening over there. So it's just curious that she's asking her that question. So there's no sense of this being available over there. The client is saying this is a specific event and this is the cause of this. But what's really the problem? Is it fear of water, fear of drowning, fear of dying, anxiety? So far, there is no clear specific identification of a specific issue that can be addressed. So there's a memory, there's a troublesome memory, which we can do the introductory exercise on. So focus on this memory. Let's move the eyes. and let's see what happens and what you notice about this specific event. But what's really the problem? The therapist says she now has a clear idea and a clear goal of what to do, but I haven't managed to hear that. If you notice something I didn't notice, just pop it down in the comments. Let's go back.
Okay, so let's review a little bit, moving on to preparation, a bit about your coping skills. So what do you use for what we've been talking about, coping, stabilization, grounding? Tell me some of that.
I do a lot of the breathing.
Okay.
I use mindful walking.
Nice.
I put myself through not put myself, that's not the way to say it. I use that skill prior to my coming back in the room after lunch.
Nice.
Stretching, sort of some pressure points on my shoulders because I was feeling the tension come up here, and just trying to stay calm and watch my breathing. And
nice. Do you do any kind of visualization or no?
Not as a routine, no.
Not as a routine?
No. I do that with clients, but I've not done it for myself.
Were you able to do the light stream that we did yesterday
Yes,
as a group?
I was.
So what I would like to do for this preparation is have you show me one of your breath strategies. We'll do that first. Then I'd like to review the light stream exercise with you as a way to test out the bilateral that we're going to be doing as part of the EMDR.
Okay.
And then we'll also come up with a few other safety measures that if, for example, what you want to signal if you want to stop, we'll get there.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So let's start with the breathing. So you can close.
This is something obviously very different from IEMT, where the practitioner helps the client in front of them relax. Nothing wrong with that. You can help your client relax. A lot of you have hypnotherapy skills. A lot of you have NLP-based backgrounds, therapy backgrounds. But the idea is, in IEMT, we're working with the problems that are present in the here and now. So if the client is experiencing something and they're actually having a problem with something, if we work with them, we're more likely to get a result than actually getting them to relax before getting into that specific state. So if the emotion is present, how familiar is this? When's the first time you can remember feeling this? If we're getting them to relax and dissociate, and then we're getting them to think about something, it's as if how they feel about it, possibly, rather than how they feel when they experience that. So when you think of that memory now, what do you feel? What do you feel when you think about it? Rather than how strong is the emotion you want to change, how vivid, how familiar, and when is the first time you can remember. And this process is sequenced in a way to get the person to associate into the emotion, having a grade from 1 to 10 on the SAT scale. How familiar to go back into a check back in time. How often has this happened? And when is the first time, which could be the emotional imprint creating event where people flash back to, where this can be something that they can work with. And how vivid is this memory when we have the person focus on it, all right? Rather than getting them to relax and just distance themselves from the emotion, which is a kind of kinesthetic denial when somebody has a specific problem. I don't want them comfortable when they think of the problem. I want them to think of the problem so we can resolve it. Think of the emotion so we can resolve that, and then notice what happens when you're actually working with the emotion that's present. Different styles, different things. That's just a thought on using the IEMT model on a specific problematic thing. Let's go back.
Close your eyes or leave them open. Just come into a breath pattern that works really well for you. And give yourself a couple sets to do that.
I'm gonna mute this for a second. So as the ad plays on, This is just basically a breathing exercise where the person is experiencing a certain thing. And as practitioners, we want the person to be actually associated, again, as I said earlier, in order for us to deal with the specific problem. I'm gonna go back to the video. All right.
I'm more calm.
More calm. Okay. So just to orient you, that is a question we use a lot in EMDR. What are you noticing now? So after I apply the stimulus, it is almost going to sound exhaustive that I ask you that question, what are you noticing now? And it's intended that way to be very open-ended. So whatever is there, like you just said, I'm calm. It could be I'm seeing this image or I'm noticing this sensation. So whatever is you're most aware of, that's what I want. And I'll help guide you to that, through that, if you have questions as we go.
Okay.
All right, so let's go to, I think it's awesome you did some mindful walking before this. That's a nice strategy you can take with you from the office. So let's go to that light stream imagery. So
before she goes to the imagery, a question that we usually ask in IEMT is very similar here. When you experience this, what do you notice? Or when we do the eye movements, what do you notice now? When we do the identity bit, what do you notice now? Excuse me. So the idea is getting the person to express what they're actually experiencing and what's going on with them. Let's continue.
I'll walk you through a couple points of it. And then I'm going to use this as a chance to start testing out the bilateral stimulation. So let's get a few things set before we even do that. So the first thing we have to test is the distance. So we'll start this with eye movements, and if for some reason you can't track the eye movements, we'll go over to tapping.
Okay.
So tell me when it feels too close.
That's too close.
Okay, so you're good?
That's good.
That's good. Okay. So let's just do a couple tests.
So nothing out of line over here. You can actually test this with your client. About the distance, about being comfortable with where the finger is. And a lot of people tend to do IEMT with the finger pointing forward. I used to do that when I first started learning stuff about IEMT. What is usually recommended is you put your hand like this and you're moving the eyes this way. It feels less as if you're pointing at the person and blaming them. This way they're just focusing on the finger, or you can even have something with a colorful tip where people can follow through on this and you can get them to move their eyes in a specific way. So let's continue.
Test sets to test the speed. Nice. And I have the option to do them horizontally or diagonally.
Nothing wrong with testing. Nothing wrong with testing the speed. From my point of view, it's better to work with the client and notice their general mannerisms, the way they speak, the way they're breathing. So if somebody's speaking super fast and they're just talking very, very quickly, you're going to move your eyes. Usually, you're going to move their eyes, move your fingers much quicker than usual. If somebody is very slow in their mannerisms and they're talking, expressing things in this specific way, you might be moving your eyes, your fingers again, moving their eyes much more slowly and much more congruently with their experience. So this is something to keep in mind. And you can also test like the therapist did over here.
Were you able to track? Okay, cool.
Yes.
All right, so let's come into the light stream. And for the actual visualization parts, you can close your eyes or leave them open. At a few intervals, I'm going to invite you to follow the fingers.
So you'll let me know when to open my eyes?
I'll let you know. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so take a moment and just allow that light, that color to come into focus. Maybe imagine it form at the top of your head. And with your breath, allow that light to begin moving either through your body or over your body. Whatever feels better for you.
I'm gonna pause over here a little bit and move to the next section
Food companies commit one of the biggest sins
of visualization process, getting the person to relax. So, gonna move towards this part. Okay. And let's go to explaining how the resource can be used in EMDR.
Is available to us at any time. If you want to stop while we're doing the processing on the target, if we run out of time and we need to close the session down, does this light feel like something we can come to that would help you kind of soothe again?
I think so, yes.
So this is like a safe spot, safe place. Usually hypnotists or NLPers use this while doing the fast phobia model, which is a resource anchor. Can you go back to this point? Sometimes it's done via touch on the shoulder. Sometimes it's done via a visualization thing when somebody is entering into what they call an abreaction in a certain sense. It could be helpful in a certain way. In IEMT, this shows you, this gives you a signal that the person is feeling another feeling, experiencing another thing, or they might be going through one of the the 5 patterns of chronicity, which is the 3-stage abreaction, which is you can stop. So what are you feeling right now? How strong is it? How familiar? When is the first time that you have experienced that? So just noticing the person's experience in the here and now, rather than telling them, okay, just calm down and let's go back to working on what we were working on before, because that's the problem. They forget that this response, that they're like the fear that comes up, the laughter that comes up, the crying, the anger, whatever, this is part of the chain of emotions that somebody might be cycling through. And it could be useful to work with this, because this is something that is one of the patterns of chronicity that they can tackle actually and work with, rather than just dismissing it as an unwanted thing that's happening, deal with it separately, and then coming back to the actual problem, dismissing this as being part of the real problem. Let's go back.
All right. Any kind of cue name you want to put on it, like my light, you don't have to. You can just say the light. But some people like to name their light.
Think pink.
Think pink? Let's do one set here just with that. Think pink.
Okay.
A nice deep breath.
The thing is here, they're testing if she can access the resource, which is the light from the visualization exercise. She's like, okay, let's work on this. What is she focusing on while she's moving the finger? Not only the fingers are just moving in a small distance, what is she focusing on? The client.
All right, nice work.
Thank you.
So 2 other orientation things I want to cover. The first is, did you like the horizontal, or did you think you might prefer the diagonal?
I think I like the horizontal.
Horizontal, okay. And the other thing is, I want to come up with a signal with you that might indicate, I want to stop this. This is too much. It's more than I bargained for. Now, what's interesting is you held up the stop sign during the memory itself, so I'm wondering if you can give me something else.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
A
like-
different sign.
Like, Jamie, this is too much. I want to come back to my light. And a lot of people will tell us that they're done, but we like to have the signal there just to be safe.
Would a gesture work?
Yeah.
Like-
Yep. We'll go with that if you do need
I
to
don't
stop.
want to repeat the other one because it's attached to it.
It is attached to it. And I'll just clarify if I see you do this, if you want to come back to light or not.
Okay.
And the other thing I want to test is, so when we're in the trauma processing here, the speed is going to be a little faster. So I want to do just a test set before I set this up to make sure you kind of know how it's going to change.
Okay.
So go ahead and follow my fingers.
The thing I find interesting about the way they process things, or at least this practitioner processes things, is the amount of things that the client has to track and be aware of the gesture of how to stop and think of this, and do you want it horizontal or do you want it this? There is so much give and take in the actual process that it actually what does the client know in the sense of how differently the effect would be if you move the eyes horizontally or more diagonally. If I ask the client, is this more comfortable? Maybe, because we know from the calibration, if we're doing this movement, there is no eye jump, and this is the place where the movement of the eyes is very comfortable for the client. So I don't see this as helpful. I don't see this as functional in getting the client to resolve their specific problem. I could be mistaken, but this is just an observation from, again, from an IEMT perspective. And let's see what happens next.
You weren't kidding.
Yeah. Can you track it?
Uh-huh.
All right. And I can go wider too, or narrower. I don't know if you notice a difference either way.
We can do it a little wider. We could try that. That's a little more difficult. We may need to narrow that stitch. That's okay. That'll work, I think.
Okay, that'll work?
I think so,
all right.
yes.
And if at any time you're into this, but it's just hurting you to do the eyes, let me know. And I would have to move my chair a little closer and touch you, but I could
Okay.
come over to tapping.
Okay.
So if that is what you want, just let me know as we go.
Okay, I'll do that.
All right, so let's get rolling. So, yeah, want to
So I'm
take a
gonna have
sip of your tea? That sounds good. All right, so bringing up your target memory of being age 6, this experience at the ocean that you told me about during your history.
So this is the part that is most similar to what we do in IEMT, where we're picking a specific memory or we're picking a specific emotion and we're working on that. So here we can just compare like specifically what happens in IEMT, what happens in EMDR, what can we do differently.
In this moment, when you bring that into your awareness, is there an
So, okay. In this moment, when you bring that into your awareness, I don't know if many people are familiar with the kinesthetic positions that are mentioned in the metaphors of movement training. I think in some IEMT trainings it's mentioned and others it's not, which is how I felt at the moment and how I feel now about what happened, how I felt about what happened at the time. So how I felt at the time and how I felt about it at the time. So if I'm telling the person, bring to your awareness what happened then and notice how you feel now, that's a very different experience than go back to that moment. How does that feel? Okay, which is think of an emotion that's problematic to you. How strong is it over time? The point of this is getting the person to associate rather than to get the person to logically or think from a meta position about what they're experiencing and what's going on with them. Let's continue.
image that's coming up for you that represents the worst part of this particular target?
So I mentioned this in the other EMDR video. Notice which part of this is the worst part. Worst part in what sense? This is more of a left brain process where the person is logically thinking, this is the worst part of my experience. I'm not sure if that would tackle the emotionally worst part or the logically worst part. It's different. And there's the image. Rather than the feeling, there might be sounds associated, there might be pictures or movies, etc. So it might not just be an image, it might be a small movie.
There's one that's the most candid. I'm not sure if it's the worst part, but it's the most candid one.
Go ahead.
As I'm laying on my back, I can see out towards the ocean, and I'm watching the pebbles, the sand move. I can see the sunlight above me, sort of, but I can't. These pebbles can move. I cannot move.
Okay. So holding that image, what is a negative belief about yourself that you associate with that image? It's usually an I am or an I am not statement. Examples might include I'm powerless, I'm helpless, I'm trapped.
Okay.
Okay, so one of the things to notice here, what is a negative belief that you associate about yourself when you think of that image? From the IEMT perspective, if the client is not mentioning these things, we don't throw that idea that there might be a belief related to that specific thing. We can ask from the people who have done the advanced, what does that mean about you? Which can give us during the what if exercise. So what if XYZ happens, then what, then whatever, and what does that mean about you? There's a specific identity belief statement, but here the client is not mentioning it. Okay, so they're not mentioning that there is an identity related thing. It's just part of the process, which is when you think of that most negative part of this, is there a belief associated to this, which is I am whatever, which can be helpful. I'm not sure how specifically it could be helpful in that specific sense, but the idea is it's not elicited from the client, it's the therapist thinks that this is a specific problem that can be addressed in a certain way, which could be or might not be a problem. Another way of phrasing this could be, when you think of this, is there a certain belief that you have about yourself, instead of what is a belief that you have about yourself? Is there gives the option for the client to say, no, there isn't any belief, and I don't think I believe anything about myself there. What is a belief? The client is forced to give an answer in a certain sense that there is something to work on.
It's an identification phrase.
Yes.
It's not an emotion phrase.
Yeah, it's an very good way to distinguish.
I want to be sure.
Yeah.
I'm powerless.
Okay. What would you like to believe now instead of I am powerless?
I'm powerful.
Okay.
Okay, here's another distinction, which is giving an affirmation. Let's say the person says, I have this identity statement, I'm powerless, what would you like to feel instead? I am powerful. That's a negation of the actual thing that they're experiencing, which is a form of kinesthetic denial in a sense. Some things like this are done in NLP, which is submodality belief change. But in submodality belief change, there is work that is done on the negative belief first, regardless if it's functional or not, if people get results or not. I personally had this exercise done on me, and I've done it on some people to which there was good results. With other people, there was no results whatsoever. But the idea is, so is it an affirmation? I'm powerful. I wanted this to replace I'm powerless. So we have the initial memory, which we could have already started with. Then there's the imposition of the belief. Then there's the creation or the affirmation or the new belief they want to form. And we haven't done anything yet so far. Let's continue.
So how true does that statement feel? I am powerful at the gut level in this moment, 1 to 7. This is a weird Shapiro scale. So 1 is completely false, 7 is completely true. So that's the scale. Here's the question. How true at the gut level does it feel that I am powerful, even when you see that image?
So we're talking about when I see the image.
Yeah. So it's now looking back.
Okay, I want to make sure I'm in the right time zone.
It's confusing.
No, that's okay. So 1 is powerless and 7 is powerful.
Yeah, 1 would be if I...
This is a very clear position of a meta position. When you look back at this event, how true does this belief feel? So now, when you look back at that specific event, how true does the I am powerful feel in that specific place? That's too much to keep track of. So right now, I'm going back thinking of a specific image, and in that specific image, I'm thinking of a new belief that I would want to be there at that specific point in time. And when thinking of that belief in that specific point in time, how true does that feel now about that specific event over there? Too much for the client to think of. And here's where the client starts playing through and just, I'm not going to say, just following the practitioner's scenario, just to say, and they're just playing along, know what's happening. They just want to make the process work rather than have something in mind and do something about it. Let's go back.
I am powerful is the goal. 1 is completely false. 7 is completely true.
If powerful is the goal, 1 is completely false. In the moment, I'm 1.
Okay. So what emotions are you noticing right now as we bring up the image and that negative belief, I am powerless?
Fear.
Okay.
I think terror might be a better descriptor.
Okay. All right. So now another scale she asks us to use. This is the classic 0 to 10. If 0 is no distress or neutral, 10 is the worst you can imagine. Where would you rate your distress in this moment as you see that image and hold that negative belief?
So where would you, let me go back and repeat this because this is important when it comes to kinesthetic positions. And this is the main difference of what do you feel when you're feeling bad, when you're feeling this terror, and how strong is it over 10 compared with what this practitioner says?
Neutral. 10 is the worst you can imagine. Where would you rate your distress in this moment as you see that image?
Where would you rate this distress at this moment as you see this image and hold that negative belief? Right now, where would you rate it? Rather than, what is the feeling that you want to change? How strong is it over 10? And how familiar is it? This makes a ton of difference in comparison with how they feel now when they think about it, compared with when you feel that feeling, how strong is it when you feel the feeling that you want to change?
And hold that negative belief.
And having the logical concept of a belief and thinking about that in association with it.
I am powerless.
An 8.
Okay. And what are you noticing in your body?
My shoulders are contracting.
Okay.
I think they're starting to rise up to my ears. I'm not sure, but it's starting to feel like that.
Yeah.
My breathing is getting more shallow.
Okay.
My facial expression's changing.
Okay. So notice all of those body sensations, and we're going to get rolling now. Just
Okay.
going to read back a few things to you. So notice those body sensations. Pair those together, or notice those together with your image. You're seeing out towards the ocean. The pebbles can move, but you cannot. So those body sensations, that image, and the negative belief that I am powerless.
There are way too many things for this person to hold in together, and lots of them are things that the practitioner thinks are things that this person might benefit if they focus on them, rather than when you think of this, what's the memory that you have? And the memory has the elements of sounds, emotions, pictures, movies, whatever. Rather than think of this thing that you told me about, and then connect it with the belief that you told me about, and then connect it with the physical feelings you're having right now. It could be very completely different things in very completely different points in time that the person is connecting with. And I don't see that as something that is one imprint. It's a logical thing that's related to the belief. It's a visual memory related to the visual things that this person is seeing, and it's the emotions, that the sensations that the person is feeling at this moment in time. Well, she's feeling these emotions at this moment in time. How strong are these feelings? How familiar? When's the first time you can remember feeling them? And based on that, okay, do the eye movements rather than connecting these different points in time that have nothing to do possibly with each other, with a logical point of view, a meta point of view, which could or could not be helpful from my perspective.
And just notice whatever it is you notice, Madeline. as I begin the stimulation.
So one thing I don't know if everybody noticed, when she was calibrating in the beginning, the client said she prefers horizontal, and right now the practitioner is doing diagonal. I think that's a mistake anybody can do. They would forget stuff, that there's recording, etc., etc. And what's the point of calibrating what's most comfortable for the client and then doing something completely different?
Breath.
Good idea.
And the thing is, what is she focusing on while she's moving her eyes? All of these things together?
What are you noticing now?
During that process,
Right
So during that process, right now, about what?
now, in this moment. You don't have to give me the whole thing, just right now.
anxious,
Okay?
frozen,
Okay.
like I can't move.
Okay, so the phrase we use with EMDR is go with that. So
For those familiar with metaphors of movement, this is like a bit of information that you can take note of and explore in a different session doing metaphors of movement. She mentions earlier that there was a barrier that she wants to overcome. Here she mentions she's frozen, she cannot move. So these are elements that you can explore with metaphors of movement. But since you're doing IEMT, this frozen, how strong is it? How familiar? When's the first time? And I think there's the element of the linchpin that can be explored also in this specific problem that this person is experiencing. You can share the stories and see what happens. And there might not be, but let's see what happens next.
So what I mean by go with that is just notice frozen,
Yeah.
continue to follow the stimulation, and let's see what else happens.
Okay.
So she's noticing frozen. Is she noticing the memory, sound? What is she noticing? What do they need to get them back into reality? What are the learning? And if you also notice, the eye movements are very minimal, so I don't think the eyes are going all the way to this side and all the way to the other side. We're not noticing the eyes of the client since the vantage point of the camera doesn't show specifically what's happening with the eye movements. But I think moving the eyes more to each and every direction creates a different impact on the process as a whole.
Take a breath. What are you getting now?
So like I'm panting,
Okay.
really shallow, fast breaths.
Okay. Keep going with that. Keep noticing that.
Again, what is she really noticing? What is she focusing on? No idea.
going.
Are you okay to keep going?
Keep going.
Now the specific reaction, what is it about? Like, I would stop here as an IMT, or I would say, so if there's a new memory over here, hold on to that memory and just keep following my fingers. Although I wouldn't go as long as this person is going, since we have a limit of 20 to 40 seconds of eye movements. This is way too long. So now in that place, the client is experiencing a physical change, physical movements, where in the real life situation, if you remember in the beginning, she was drowning and she lifted her hand up in order for her father to see her and to be able to help her out. This is a great place to use the physiological state accessing cues. So I would stop. Okay, hold on to this and don't move. Make it tighter, tighter, tighter. Relax. That's a good place to do that, and explore what happens over there.
Go with that.
Or maybe keep her hand lifted up. Just move her head a little bit. Is this the same? Raise her left hand a little bit. Is this the same? Because they are already in the physical, emotional state that is related to that emotional state that they want to change, and we want to insert things in that physical state that help them shift or change something in their experience. How helpful this is, no idea. The breathing has slowed down a little bit, so this is a kind of a bit of change. But what is the change about? Don't put it in it. Again, the eye movements are way too long. The client might just be tired. We're looking at something moving for over 2 minutes now.
Take a breath.
I didn't want to breathe.
Okay. Anything else you're noticing right now?
Like my lungs can't take air in.
Okay. Go with
So
that.
I'm really
Go with that.
What is she going with? Again, what is she going with? This is an actual real life situation that happened with this person. And this is a physical feeling that she's feeling at that specific moment. So what is she really working on? If somebody is underwater and they're sinking and they're swallowing the ocean, they need to be able to respond in a different way. So the frozen part related to what happened before, and there is a sense of training that this person definitely needs. Training of what to do if this happens again, rather than feeling differently about drowning, which is something that is severely missed in this approach or in this demonstration. So I'm going to continue to the part where the eye movements end, and then close out this video. Let's continue.
Keep noticing.
as if the client actually, it's assumed that the client knows what they're focusing on. Notice another physical lab reaction that's happening over there, and the client she's continuing. Seems to be moving forward in time. That's coming into the episodic method. Is that being while middle of choking.
Go with that. Whatever you're at.
It's really like
I'm on my feet.
Okay. What else you noticing?
I want to get out of the water.
Okay.
I can't get out there fast enough.
Okay, go with that.
Somebody's drowning, wanting to get out of the water is something very, very useful and very helpful.
I'm crying.
Okay. Can you notice that?
Yeah. And I am angry.
Go with angry.
I have to take a breath.
Take your breath.
Everything is assumed to have relation only with this specific event that's happening. So go with angry, go with crying, go with this. While a lot of things might have happened before the specific event happened, and there's no precision whatsoever in that specific moment. I'm gonna stop here because I think this video has went on long enough. You can continue watching. If you want me to do the continuation of the video from here, if you watch the full video, I can. If you're watching up until now, I hope this was beneficial in a certain sense. In September, I'm going to do the advanced IEMT practitioner for those who haven't done the advanced or who would like to retake it again. And before that, a couple of days before that, I'm doing using IEMT in business, which is thinking of the IEMT processes and how to apply them to stuff like imposter syndrome, to apply them to stuff where people are feeling afraid to be themselves at work, somebody who works in sales in a certain sense and their reactions to their clients, somebody who needs to do some public speaking in front of people, how to deal with that, something I call the 3 pillars of procrastination. So if you're interested in that, it's also posted below in the group. You can check the event out. If you have any questions, any comments, anything that you have noticed in this video that I have not noticed, please point them out. And one last thing, if eventually you've watched this far, I'm doing a training in New Delhi in India, a set of trainings for a fundraising event at the end of September. And the link of these trainings is going to be posted in the description of this video. If you can please share it to your network, to people that you know in India, that would be great, because all the funds that will be raised from these trainings will go to the organization that we're working with that helps homeless people in India. So thanks for watching so far. Let me know if you have other videos that you want me to comment on or talk about, dissect in a certain sense the IEMT way, and I'll probably do that. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye.